welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue with operant conditioning, which is a lot about rewards and punishments. So in our last video, we went over what do positive punishment look like? What do positive reinforcement look like? What do negative punishment and negative reinforcement look like? Now let's continue with something called continuous schedule of reinforcement. Now we're going to look at establishing responses first. So producing the quickest way to eliminate a behavior. So let's just do the same formula like we did before with the PP, PR, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So next we're going to say that Fi would mean our fixed interval. Wonder what fixed interval. But don't worry about that. We'll explain that. Just keep in mind, in our left column is Fi. Then we're going to put Fr. So Fi and Fr. Remember, we're only focusing on coding our brain. So left column, start with Fi for fixed interval, Fr for fixed ratio. So Fi, Fr. So fixed interval and fixed ratio. All right, now before I go into explaining what this means, remember we want to code our brain with formulas. So on our right side, we're going to write VI and VR. So VI will be our variable interval. And underneath our variable interval is our variable ratio. So let your brain look at that. So how would you code that into your brain? What's the easy way to remember if you were taking an exam? So first of all, remember, sometimes the easy way to remember things is to put them in different categories or use acronyms. So if we put them in categories like what I'm doing, we're going to think of like we did with the other chart. So we're going to think of charts. So we're going to look at, in our left column, we have Fi. And our left column, we have Fr. So we know 2 F's, 1 I, 1 R. Right column, 2 V's. So we have our VI, VR. So what I'm going to do is explain what is going on here. So remember, we're looking at rewards and punishments. So what's going on? What is going on? We're reinforcing a behavior after it's applied a certain amount of times, or if we get a number of responses. What's going on? So in our fixed interval, we're going to look at reinforcing a behavior after a fixed period of time as long as the behavior is emitted at least once during the interval. Okay, so once again, right here, you're only going to continue to reinforce after a fixed period of time. So say for if you may want to reinforce something after the 3rd time or after, so you want to think of time. So after maybe the 16th time something happens. So fixed period of time, okay? As long as the behavior is emitted at least once during the interval. Okay. So remember, first column we have Fi for fixed interval. Now we're going to look at Fr for fixed ratio. Fixed ratio will be a reinforcement after a fixed number of responses, such as your job will pay you based upon the amount of pieces you collect. So if this is a job, you'll get based. So after every 10th piece. So every 10th piece, you'll get a paycheck. Let's see, you could also say every 100 pieces. It's kind of challenging right now here, but that's okay. We can still see it. Okay, so after the 10th piece or 100 pieces, you'll get paid. So you'll get paid. So the job will pay you by the piece. So the first piece, second piece, all the way to the 10th piece. So 100 pieces is the same thing. So it's reinforcement after a fixed number of responses. Job will pay you. So you'll get paid. Job, you get paid by the piece. So it could be even one piece. It could be the 10th piece. Okay, so remember that's different from fixed interval. Fixed interval, you'll get paid after the fixed period of time. So the fixed period of time will be 3. So after the 3rd period of time, as long as you keep doing the behavior and the behavior is stopped at least once during this interval. Okay, now let's look at variable interval. Variable interval. Variable interval is reinforced after a variable amount of time, as long as the behavior is emitted at least once during the interval. Example, pop quiz. So, how do a pop quiz work? Do you know when it's giving? No. Nope. You don't know. That's why it's called a pop quiz. So a pop quiz happens, some teachers may give a pop quiz after reading a chapter, maybe every Friday, maybe once a semester. It's a pop quiz. So you don't know the time, but you know that during that time period in that class, you are given a pop quiz. So variable interval. Remember, it's a reinforcement after a variable amount of time, as long as the behavior is emitted at least once during the interval. Now let's look at variable ratio. Variable ratio is the reinforcement after a variable number of responses. So this will be an example of casino gambling. Do you know, excuse my handwriting. Do you know if you're going to win money every time you go to the casino? Could it be on your first time? Could it be on your 50th time? How do you know? You don't know. But you know that you might win, right? Because you see people winning. You may have even won yourself. So variable ratio, it's a reinforcement after a variable number of responses. So it don't matter if you won finally after your 50th time playing. Now you know that it's a chance you will win. So you're going to keep playing because it's being reinforced that you actually will win. If you're there and you never won and you saw other people winning, you're going to keep playing because it's being reinforced that you actually can win. You just may have to play longer and keep coming back. So that behavior is reinforced, which is also, that produces a fast rate of acquisition and at least susceptible for extinction. So it's like an addictive behavior. You just never know, so you want to keep going back, keep going back. You know that the payoff will come any day, so you keep playing. It's very addictive. So it's the fastest way to produce a response, an addiction, right? And it's also the most challenging response to stop or extinct, like how I was saying. It's challenging for extinction in the variable response. All right, so let's go over everything all together and see what we've learned. So we know that in the left column, we want to keep the same letters, but hey, if you Google something and find something different, that's fine, but I'm suggesting that you keep it simple. So we have FI, FR, and FI, remember that. That's our fixed interval. Fixed interval. After this amount of times, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get my money. FR, fixed ratio. After every piece that I produce, I get money. After the first piece, because that's what they said. Excuse me. It could be after the 10th piece. I know I'm getting money, but it's literally, wait, this might be confusing. I'm just going to say after every piece. Let's just make that really easy. So I'll put one piece, but it's after every piece. All right, so that's the fixed ratio, fixed amount of times. Then we have the variable interval, because we don't know, right? We can get the pop quiz on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We don't know. It's variable intervals, but we know it could happen, right? Because it's happened. So then we have the variable ratio, where we deal with addiction, because we know something's going to happen. It happened to us or happens to someone that's close to us, and we want it to happen to us. So we keep doing this behavior over and over and over, and it's challenging to stop because it just comes in bursts at times. It's also the more reinforcing, the more we strengthen the variable ratio. So if we look at fixed interval, the scalloped and the low rate of responding. Fixed ratio, steady and high rate of responding, but some scalloping. Variable interval, steady but low rate of responding. Variable ratio, highest rate of responding and most resistant to extinction. All right, so remember again. These are the schedules of intermittent reinforcement under operant condition with Thorndike or Skinner. Rewards and punishments are the goal. And the variable is not predicted, steady rate of response. So when we're looking at fixed, we want to think of predictable, scallop rate of response, remember? And variable, not predictable, okay? Not predictable. And these are predictable. Okay. Let me make a little note. So, remember, over here, not predictable. Okay. And on the left side, these are predictable. Awesome. So remember, the ratio, so the R, that's our behaviors. Okay. So when you see R, that's our behaviors. When we think of interval, you think of time. So behaviors, let me put this somewhere. So when we think of R, think of behaviors. And remember, this is going to give the high response rate. So I'll put up response. Okay, now when we think of intervals, we're going to think of time. Okay, so we're going to have a low response rate. All right, so from weakest to easiest, think of variable ratio. Oops, excuse me. So from weakest to easiest, we're going to think of variable ratio, fixed ratio, variable interval, and fixed interval. So we started with the strongest and hardest to extinguish all the way to the weakest and easiest. So I think I said that backwards. So don't forget. So remember, our ratios, our behaviors, up, up, high response. Okay? Time, low response. So when we look at our strongest and hardest to extinguish, so we have our VR, which is our variable ratio. Remember casino gambling with addiction? So strongest and hardest to extinguish. Then next we have our fixed ratio. That's the next thing. That's strongest and hardest to extinguish. Then we have our variable interval. Then we have our fixed interval. Okay, I said it right that time. All right. So that right there just helped us understand a lot about how do we get our rewards and punishments. What do it look like if the behavior is predictable, if the behavior is not predictable. We're working with behaviors. We know we're working with time. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video.